Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee of Melbourne Borough Council. Um, before I proceed with the formal business, I'm wondering about the scheduling of these meetings, whether it's deliberate or just accidental. But at the last meeting, I pointed out we were on the auspicious St George's Day, and it was also my eldest son's birthday. And today, of course, it's the 150th anniversary of General Custer's defeat at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Might be an omen for the leader's presentation later. But it's also my youngest son's birthday, and as again, I haven't bought him a card. I just like to say happy birthday, Andrew. My other son's birthdays don't coincide with scheduled meetings, so I'll have to make do with a text. Anyway, I've got that out of the way. I did tell him I'd say happy birthday to him online. Right, I'd like to proceed with the formal business. Firstly, just to welcome everyone to this meeting. We've got quite a lot of new faces here. Councillors Glancy, Allnat, Cox and Orson are new members of the committee for this cycle. And of course, Councillor Ziggy Atherton is a returning member of Scrutiny, but newly appointed. So maybe with some new blood, we'll have lively debates tonight. I'm sure everybody will try. Noises off will be ignored. Okay, just go through the formalities of the evening. Just to remind members that we will be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak. Please switch mobile phones to silent. Should you need to leave the room during the meeting, unless it's an emergency evacuation, when emergency exits should be used, please use the marked exit and entrance. Just to remind you of the evacuation procedure, if you have to leave for any reason in an emergency, leave by the nearest emergency exit and assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. If anyone needs assistance, officers are here to provide it. The meeting is covered by legislation that allows the public to film, record or use social media. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. Right, tonight, I'm Mike Brown, chairing the meeting. I have in attendance the Director for Place and Prosperity, Lydia Ruslin, who's on my right, and Democratic Services, Senior Democratic Services Officer Adam Green, who's on my left. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I believe we only have one apology, which is from Councillor Chubb, and otherwise everyone is here. Item 2 is minutes of the last meeting. That's to confirm the minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the 23rd of April 2026. Before I proceed to ask for a proposer for those minutes, are there any issues relating to the minutes, either by way of correction or omission? Councillor Gordon. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, it's on page 9. It's stockyard and future opportunity, future opportunities, I should say. Right, I'm not sure if I've got this right. So if this sounds all right to you, that's fine. But it's just a bit at the last sentence. I'll just read it through quick. Members were advised that there is a strong focus on marketing and communications to promote both the existing offer at the stockyard and future opportunities arising from the development. This includes recognising and celebrating the businesses already established on site. In addition to the farmers and their trading activities, several businesses have operated from the site for up to 20 years, forming an important part of its identity and success. Encouragingly, early inquiries have already been received for these units, indicating market interest and demand. The only thing is just this last sentence where it said received for these units. Now, are these units the future new units, or are these some of the units that some businesses have let go? I don't know. I just thought it could be expanded a bit more or explained.
I guess the answer is that clarification was best sought at the meeting. These are a record of what was actually said there, but my recollection is it was relating to all units at the stockyard, but particularly the new ones.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's helpful, we can add to the minutes the new units or the future units. You happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Allnut.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to those minutes relating to the stockyard, I notice on reading them, because of course I wasn't a member of the committee then, that there are some significant statements about policy in driving the project forward. And I just want to put a marker down that I'll be seeking under item 8 to solicit from the leader whether or not those significant aspects are going ahead as stated in the minutes, in particular with respect to the short lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allnut, but you're not raising an issue about the accuracy of the minutes. No, thank you. Are there any other comments on the minutes? Could I have a proposer to agree the minutes, please? Councillor Holmes, and the seconder, Councillor Thwaites. Just show of hands, and whether you're at the meeting or not, you're entitled to vote, just to remind you. Those in favour of approving the minutes? Thank you, they are approved. Shouldn't switch myself off. Item 3 on the agenda is the response tracker. And I'm going to turn to Adam for an update on this. It was actually related to an item that was raised by a previous member of the committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as it kind of states there, the director will be writing a members bulletin article, and that's where the update will appear. I also believe that the director's spoken to the member who actually originally raised the query as well. So based on those actions, I think we proposed that this action has been resolved, and it will come off on the next response tracker.
Thank you for that, Adam. And obviously we'll all see that bulletin in due course.
Yeah.
Okay, item 4 on the agenda is declarations of interest, and I'd just like to invite any members who feel they need to declare an interest in respect of the business here tonight. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I don't know whether this will come up, but it's page 35, and it's the private rented sector housing enforcement and civil penalty policies. My sister has a second house that she rents out. And also the other one's the Waterfield Leisure Centre on page 56 and also on page 31 where it might come up. I'm a member of the Waterfield Leisure Centre, but only in as far as using the facilities and equipment. I've been advised that I can stay in the meeting and participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Any other declarations of interest? Right, move on to item 5, which is review of the forward plan. And just to explain, particularly to newer members of the committee, it's a standing item on scrutiny. The forward plan is attached to our agenda, and it's an opportunity if any member wishes to raise any issues relating to the items listed in that. Are there any items members wish to raise? Councillor Allnut.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair, I'm just having a moment, as if just bear with me. Yes, it's page 5 of the report, and it's CEX 538. It's page 25 of the bound document and 5 of the actual forward plan. Relinquished clearance of debris screens. Now, that was introduced quite recently, back in April. And I just want to remind you that these debris screens are not, strictly speaking, our normally our remit. That's to say, this council's remit, and we had one up in Councillor Orson's patch at one point, but I think that was resolved by the Highway Authority, and we've got one which is in the ward of Councillor Ian Atherton and Sharon Brown, where there is a complexity of an issue, and I think it should be worth noting that some activity, some thinking will have to go into that relinquishment of that particular task when it comes about. I understand that it's the reason why we're relinquishing this responsibility is because of health and safety and insurance issues on land that is not ours. But nevertheless, I think that particular problem, I think it's in Freebie Avenue or Freebie Close. I can't remember the precise finish of the name of the road. I think that is I think that's something that we should ask the Cabinet to be wary of. Now, the other one that I wanted to raise was further on, and that relates to the handling of the money going forward from revenue and capital projects. And I noticed that it is a key item, and I think that this committee should be minded to call it in when Cabinet make the decision on that. It's actually PH 149, which is on page 36 of the bound document, revenue and capital carry forward. The other thing I wanted to note, and obviously it's always difficult when you get a handover of administrations, but there are some significant omissions from the forward plan on planning, on HMOs, on allotments, on car parking machines, and also another item dear to our hearts, Chairman, which was the budget allocation for work, potential work on the railway embankment in our ward. And I don't see that in the work programme. So these are omissions which I would like to see expanded upon within the work programme, particularly as we've only got it's less than a year before we finish our duty as this council. Thank you.
Just need to be clear what you're asking this committee to do, Councillor Allnutt. I mean, you've indicated on one item you thought there should be a call in, and then you've made reference to our work programme and including things within it. I mean, the work programme is a separate item on the agenda. I think it'd be helpful if you could be a bit more specific is what you're asking the committee to do. I understand you're drawing attention to a number of items, but I think we need to know what you're asking this committee to actually undertake.
I'm asking this committee to report to Cabinet that we've got some reservations about the ceasing of clearing the debris screens with respect to the one item which appears in the ward represented by Councillor Atherton and Brown, because it's an ongoing problem. So I think that one needs to be treated with some sensitivity. The one that I think for our own work programme is the call in on the last one I mentioned, which was the revenue and capital carry forward, where once the 151 officer and the Cabinet are ready to sign that off, I think it's something we should look at really, because it's quite substantial in its impact. The final point is I'd ask the committee to note to Cabinet that there seem to be some areas of activity which I know we'll be touching on in the future, which don't appear in the work programme at all. And this is a work programme for the council and the Cabinet, essentially. It's not our work programme. We're on the forward plan. Yeah. So I'm just asking that this committee note those points, not by way of criticism, but just that, it needs to be fleshed out a bit, I think, because we are entering a period of substantial change for this council and this community, and we've got to fit it in alongside other things. I mean, for example, there's no mention in the forward plan about the bid vote, which will happen this summer, which will be a commitment for 4 years, and and the ballot is run by this council. And also, I may mention it under item 8. I believe this council has to decide how we will cast our vote, because we are a major giver of money to the bid, and I think it would be wrong just to nod it through. I'm not against it. I'm just saying I think we need some attention to detail as a council, not just this committee. Thank you, Chairman. I've taken up enough time.
No, thank you for that. I mean, a couple of observations, but I've made a note of the key items you'd raised. But I also think we need to be clear on the role of this committee and its scheduled work programme, which is part of our agenda tonight, and the other options open to all members collectively or individually to raise these concerns. And we touched on this when we had our workshop setting out the programme for this year. And one of the points that was raised within that was you don't have to, have a list of, we're not going to be having scrutiny committees with a whole list of questions. I mean, tonight we will, because we're going to be grilling the leader, or if we had a portfolio holder here. But the option is always there to raise any of these matters through questions to the leader at council meetings. So I think it's a bit of both, and that option should be used where, especially where the council meeting is going to come up before we next have a scrutiny committee meeting. But I made a note of those two particular points, and obviously we can actually go forward with those. Any other matters relating to the forward plan? Okay, thank you. So we move on to the work programme, and as those who were at the workshop we held, we put together a suggested work programme for the coming year. When we got to the end of and sorry, that's been circulated as a supplementary paper. When we got actually towards the end of that workshop, I made the point, and I think it was generally agreed, that what we set out now may not be what we actually do during the course of the coming year. Not to put too fine a point on it, we've got a new administration in post. We're awaiting, and we'll get some of that tonight, some more detail about the direction they intend to take, and that may determine what we feel as a scrutiny committee are our proper areas of focus. So although we've got a work programme here, and we always caveat that with saying the committee is able to reconsider its priorities during the course of the year, and we have a mid-year review in November, for instance. But I think more so than ever, what we've got here tonight is a framework for the year ahead, rather than a written in stone suggestion for how we proceed for the year ahead. I mean, we only have 4 more meetings, after this one. We don't have that many meetings of scrutiny, and some of them are taken up with programmed items that we're required to as part of our constitution, such as looking at the budget and our crime and disorder meeting in the autumn. But what I will say to committee members, that I am very open to being approached about changing priorities, and whilst it's a collective consultation, ultimately it's in the gift of the chair under the constitution to vary this work programme and to bring items forward to committees over the course of the year. So having said that, as well, a long prelude, I welcome comments about the work programme. Councillor Holmes, and your hand up.
Just to say that why we didn't come to the workshop, which I wanted to come to, Councillor Austin and I were in here till I think it was 20 to 5. I hadn't eaten since 8 o'clock this morning. I'd been in something in the morning. Then I got home, and quite honestly, it would have been 8 o'clock by the time I'd got to you. So, I'm very sorry about that, but it was unfortunate. And I hope that when we do have these internal meetings, that we don't have them when it's very difficult for us to get to things like this. But I apologise. We both do. Thank you.
Your absence was noted and sorely missed. But you weren't the only ones who couldn't make that particular workshop. Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Just one of the sort of things I've observed within it that perhaps we omitted last time was around staffing. I think as we approach LGR, we discussed and touched on levels of staffing and threat to the establishment, and in particular then the impact of costs potentially on the budget, because we're going to be having to use agency staff potentially. And I don't know how that will feature, but I think it's something we've got to monitor, because we are moving towards LGR, and I'm already aware of certain departments that are struggling.
I mean, I think that's a good point, because one of the things we did pick up and is reflected in the work programme is that pretty much everything is going to be seen through the lens of LGR in the coming months or the coming year. But if it's helpful to specifically, and I think you're right, yeah, we've already pretty well been told that there's going to be a challenge in maintaining our existing services, let alone undertaking the work, because staffing is going to become an issue, and understandably, recruiting during this period is going to be very hard. And I believe the administration, I think you might want to come back to that after the leader's presentation, because it's a legitimate question. That's going to be a big issue. But we can. Oh, I'm sticking to my piece of paper. I'm sure we can work that into what's said here. Councillor Thwaites.
Thanks. Yeah, because the last meeting, the workshop wasn't a public one, I just wanted to say this, partly the same thing that you just said, which is there's a lot of focus on the LGR and getting the LGR right, which is absolutely really important to everybody. But it's also within that, we've got to make sure we don't destroy our existing services that people are expecting and getting to. So there is in some of the ways, there's a slightly different focus on it. Not just looking at, are we doing LGR successfully? Are we maintaining our current services? There was a couple of other things that I said in that meeting, which I think we in the previous versions, we'd actually said we would actually bring back to scrutiny, which isn't there, which is the older person's housing review, which has gone, and we said that would come back when it comes through for its next iteration. And there's some of the other ones that I said in the meeting, the workshop, which was the asset development and disposal process that we were using, and also healthcare provision in the town. Those were a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that we don't forget those within the work programme. Thanks.
I mean, I think you're right, and certainly in no particular order. And the asset issue, I think, is going to be coming forward. The health provision was an interesting one, because we had quite a discussion around that, didn't we? And one of the issues, although we haven't done it every year, it is constitutionally, it's part of the remit of this committee to have oversight around matters relating to public health. And we certainly had one meeting, I think it's about 2 years ago, where we had representatives from the NHS here. Didn't leave me particularly inspired at the end of it, but at least we had them here and had an opportunity to quiz them about a range of issues. And the older person housing review, I mean, I know that's an important ongoing issue, but I'll refer back to what I said about this is not written in stone. And I think we're going to have a better idea of the timetables on various issues and when we need to be pulling them in for further scrutiny in the next month or so. Any other comments on the work programme? Okay, well, I'm going to take it. I'm not going to have a vote on it. I'm taking it that is the basis of our work programme for the coming year, subject to the caveats I've indicated about the being a bit nimble and flexible as we proceed. Okay, I'll move on to item 7 then, which is the scrutiny annual report. And as you're being asked to approve the annual report and its presentation for noting at council, I'll just invite any comments about the annual report, because this is your last chance. If there's anything you think we've missed or want to add, or just don't agree with what's in there, this is your opportunity to raise any queries. I always like silence. So the recommendation is the scrutiny approves the annual report at Appendix A and recommends the report to council. Could I have a proposer for that recommendation? Councillor Allnut and a seconder? Councillor Atherton. Those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. We now move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the leaders' annual presentation. Again, those members who've been on the committee for a while know that we do this every year. I guess in the past, it's been partly reflecting on the year that's just gone and partly looking forward. But I think it comes as no surprise to you, Councillor Brown. I think there's an expectation here tonight that we're going to hear, from you laying out the intentions of what is a new administration. So it's mainly going to be about what goes forward. But when we get to questions, that doesn't limit us to asking things about stuff that we knew was in train or has previously been agreed by the council. Okay, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. Yeah, absolutely, Chair. With the guidance that you've given, I have prepared a presentation that will look at the way forward and what our priorities are, etc. Just answering Councillor Allnutt's comments on the work programme, just to reassure you, the work programme is going to be updated. It's just we've been a number of weeks in administration and we've reprioritised things, so we expect you to come back and want to look at those areas, some of which are natural cross-party issues. There are Councillor Twaits says that we want services to continue, so they need to be looked at, not touch on some of the points raised as well in the presentation. So let me continue. Okay, so the Scrutiny Committee work programme annual update. So what I'm going to go through is the cabinet priorities, as you'd expect with any new administration. We've not changed everything. We've not thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We'll continue to do the good stuff, but we've just reprioritising what we feel is needed. Local government reorganisation, I'm going to go into that in a little bit of detail. Initial overview of corporate strategy review and changes proposed. Again, a slight different direction that we want to go down on that. And further detail on the recent announcements. So I'll cover what I mean by the GP services, flooding, the Melton Theatre and economic growth. Okay, so obviously key considerations. Yeah, there has been a change in political leadership and we're approaching obviously that key decision, which we are told is still on track for the 13th of July on local government reorganisation. And I'll explain our approach to that and hopefully how everybody can get involved in it. And that naturally leads to a review and consideration of existing commitments and priorities, our new priorities, the preparation for local government reorganisation, review and reprioritisation, including the corporate strategy commitments. I think everybody has seen the cabinet. We did increase it by 1. The reason being is to set ourselves up with robustness and resources for local government reorganisation and the extra work that's coming. I'll talk about that and I'll go on to what Councillor Cox raised in relation to staffing and resources, very relevant point, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail as the slides go on. The portfolio responsibilities have been sent out and to everyone. And there's a couple of other areas that we want to talk about tonight. One's around allotments. The reason for that is we want to leave our services that are going to be transferred most likely to a town council if we decide to go down that route in good shape. We don't want a reputation. I think any of us wouldn't want that to hand over our facilities or assets that aren't in great shape. Social value from council contracts, we'll talk about that, which stuff like the cattle market, etc. Sorry, the stockyard, our repairs and maintenance contract, how that can add in. And then obviously we have the new change to the assets of community value and the new burdens money that's coming with that there as well. And we've moved around some of the responsibilities where we feel that things have need a little bit more attention, etc. Country Park Armed Forces, counter-terrorism, just to name a few. So we come in, and I think I said this in my in my last leader's speech, is that there's 4 areas that our principle as a cabinet and as an administration is we want to try and manage the finances well. I think we've done that well in the past, and it's been relatively well managed prior to us coming back into administration. but there are some concerns, especially on the housing revenue account that we've inherited this year. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. We'll look after the most vulnerable. That's most important. And I think about service continuity, it's clear that as we don't want to be focusing on ourselves and the council focusing on local government reorganisation, we want to make sure those who do need services get access to them, and we look after them as best we can. Ensure the council is in a good position as we go through local government reorganisation. I've touched on that a few times. And be focused on key priorities and consider stopping doing other things. And I think that's maybe a role the scrutiny could play as the year goes on and as local government reorganisation kicks in, is there may be certain things that we need to stop to keep those core services working and running as well. But at the moment, we're able to keep all the services operating as we are doing so. So our priorities is to manage the transition. We want to increase the interaction with parish councils. I've had a conversation with colleagues across the rest of Leicestershire districts and also the county council. I'll go on about that in a little minute. I met with the leader of the county council. I've met with him a few times now, and we together, all of us, want to ensure the parishes and town councils are very much part of the local government reorganisation agenda and are given more support and listened to a lot more. We've started a Melton Town Centre Tidy Up refresh. The reason for that is that we feel that, and I think most people would agree, is that if aesthetically the neighbourhood in which you live in or work in or shop in looks good, it does help businesses, etc. And that's we've had some positive feedback. Delivery of the Stockyard project, I can say we're not changing anything fundamentally. I will go through that in a little while. The planning service resourcing and effectiveness, this is an area that is a priority for us, and we are looking to increase resources and in relation to a number of concerns that we have around our ability to deliver, but also around ensuring staff are given the resources that they need to try and deliver a good service, etc. And we did that review over the last few weeks, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Review of our assets, which everybody's raised. I'll go into that in more detail. Economic growth and inward investment. This is a new priority for us, and we're going to put more effort into this, etc. Strategic partnerships. I'll go into what we've done already, who we've engaged with, and the in principle ways forward that we've agreed, and maintaining progress on key projects and programmes of work. So local government reorganisation, I think, and apologies if if this is going over old ground, etc. But we got a decision in mid-July. What I've asked the senior leadership team to do is that prepare for the different scenarios. There's been county-wide scenarios that have been considered by district, city, and county. What happens depending on each of the options that may come forward, and depending on that, there is that what we will do is we will set up an all-member cross-party and political balance group within this council, and hopefully people will come forward and want to be involved in that. Then at the end of July, we're going to have a cabinet and senior leadership workshop. That was meant to be earlier, I think, from the previous administration. The reason we pushed that back is that I feel that until we know exactly what the picture looks like, we're talking around maybes rather than what is. September, we're going to have an all-member workshop to consider the corporate strategy, delivery, organisational priorities and prioritisation and resourcing. And I will say it now, is there is going to need to be more financial resources put in. We've talked across the county. We've looked at other what other areas have done prior to us, and there's going to have to be some capacity released with staff. It's not that we can't just bring staff in to do it because they don't know the local area, they don't know how this organisation works, and that's the same across all of the other local authorities across Leicestershire and Rutland. And then by December, the Scrutiny Committee will receive an updated corporate strategy and local government reorganisation transition plan ahead of Cabinet to scrutinise, focus on and comment in. But I've made it absolutely clear to the Chief Executive that I want members involved as much as they want to be involved, because this is about us handing over. There's been many of us who most likely won't stand for a new unitary, but there may be many of you who do want to stand for the new unitary council. So it's important that people are given that opportunity to be involved. The current focus is we're doing the no regrets activity, which we've got probably 3 or 4 weeks of that left, and then we'll see what the government's decision is, and who knows what it'll be. So we're not going to preempt or presume. And the other thing is we will work whatever option there is. we're not going to fight anything. We're going to work with it because it will be pushed through by this current government. Basically, we're no longer in business as usual. I've seen over the last 6-7 weeks the amount of time that this has taken up for the senior leadership team, etc., and for councillors. So we want to leave the council in the best possible position for a smooth transfer, and that's why we are investing in the areas that we want to invest in. We want to maintain continuity. We want to involve councillors, as I said. We want to engage the parishes effectively, and officers and cabinet members continue to liaise with local, regional, national partners and networks. And there's another briefing this week. It didn't really tell us a lot, but just that everything is on track. So we will take the ministers at the word that that's basically what's going to happen. Continuing on, just note the progress that's been made since the submission of the council's proposal for local government reorganisation, and I recognise all the hard work that's gone in with the previous administration. Note that the council continues to understand the ministerial minded to decision on local government reorganisation, and note that following the government's decision, council will be requested to establish informal joint committees to oversee the preparatory and transitional processes, and in advance of formal establishment of any joint committees established at the point of structural order changes orders take effect. We have been consulted on that, and there has been a submission that's been made of all the different scenarios of what that would look like jointly from all of the local authorities across the region. So the first thing that we've done basically is we've looked at the town centre as a priority for the previous administration and for the previous council prior to 2023. It continues to be for ourselves, working with the SPD, the Town Centre Design Guide. We have taken £20,000 out of corporate priorities to begin with to look at refreshing aesthetically the benches, the furniture, etc. And we've done that purposely because the feedback we've had is that the town looks tired, it looks run down a little, and the feedback we've had so far is that's been very positive. And we're going to look again, working with the county council who have met the leader and working with Network Rail, we're going to look at whether we can get stuff like the bridge, the railings and the other street furniture that's not in our control or ownership also improve. So I've had a positive conversation with Leicester County Council on that. So hopefully overall by the end of the year, things will look aesthetically a lot better and make it a more pleasant environment to come and work shopping. And there's just some pictures there. Stockyard delivery. We had our first board meeting of the new arrangements, which is cross-party politically balanced today. And Councillor Mike Brown and Councillor Sharon Butcher attended that, as well with myself and Councillor Child. We're not changing the way we're going. I think it's gone so far down the road, it wouldn't be wise to change course. And then following a comprehensive procurement process, the council has entered into a pre-contract services agreement ahead of a construction contract being finalised. There's an operational plan continues apace with regular updates and an internal programme. And today we agreed an all-member briefing that's going to be scheduled, I believe, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so everybody can be brought up to date. That'll be done in a confidential environment, so people can go into the detail in which we went into today, because there is still a number of risks that are outstanding, and we need to be mindful of those risks. And as a council, with the environment around costs and the geopolitical situation in the world, we will not be immune to certain risks, i.e. construction costs possibly going up, and that is something that's an issue across the whole country. But at the moment, we seem to be okay, but depending on what happens in places like Iran, etc., and the cost of materials, and I know myself in my own working life, we're seeing significant costs in building material prices going up, etc. But let's go into that more detail in that briefing, where we can talk about it in a lot more detail and people can ask questions about that. Planning service, resource and effectiveness. This remains a significant area of focus. Councillor Pritchett, who's come in as the portfolio holder, has worked with officers, and we've identified the need. for bringing additional resources in to more quickly improve the service standards, but also bring the expertise and bring the, more knowledge into the planning department to be able to get applications turned around quicker, make sure that applications are put in that are put in robustly with the correct information, and we're not always going back to applicants. And also as well is that the committee reports and the information going to committee and the briefings are much more robust. And we've had really productive conversations with the senior leadership team about that there. And we've got some additional expertise that's coming in. I have a meeting tomorrow with a barrister in relation to how we can do things much more efficiently and be more driven to look at getting things done in a much more robust way, where we're not continually having to adjourn meetings or having to rewrite reports or having to ask applicants to resubmit. And then there was the launch of the Spark, which is the planning advice request and knowledge service, and I believe members and a number of members have participated in that, taken part, and I believe that's the first session's gone down quite well. There's investment in a new hosted technically managed IT system that'll improve processes, data and reporting and system stability. And we know that it was seen a few weeks ago that the system went down, and hopefully that won't happen again. So again, we're going to continue with that. That makes absolute sense. New inquiry service arrangements for councillors, members of the public and applicants. I know that my group have been using it and it's been quite effective, and I've used it myself. And again, I would like to thank the officers for the robust responses that we are getting. That has improved. Plans are in progress to develop additional support and engagement with parish councils and agents, so they will also get a similar service where hopefully we can get away from this us and them, and they can come in and sort out issues prior to it. It may not always end up with the end result that people actually want, but hopefully it will improve the understanding and make people come to a conclusion or an understanding as well where decisions or why decisions are being made. And then the external expertise that I talked about to review and support the quality of reports, decision making, and to support staff members as well, because as we transition again as local government reorganisation into a new authority, we want to make sure that the staff and the work in this authority is going across in a good, effective, quality way. And we'll continue to review, reflect, and seek the advice of this scrutiny committee. And again, there will be all member briefings on a regular basis as to the progress of the planning service, which Councillor Pritchett and the director are going to discuss next week about when that first one's going to be. Review of the asset-based decisions. So the previous administration had made some decisions. As you would appreciate, any new administration coming in like ourselves, we just took a few weeks just to pause, reflect and review the assets. That's just the right thing to do. And we are continuing with all of the decisions that the previous administration had made, which many of them have gone down the road so far that it doesn't make any sense not to do so. But there is a few tweaks that we've made. So the recently approved commercial disposal will proceed as planned. Disposal of the Cove Community Centre will proceed as planned. Further work being undertaken in relation to the future use and design of Parkside. So that is going to be a change, most likely, due to the option that was put forward is not affordable, but we're still going to be able to use the money and still have an improved facility here at Parkside. And we're just waiting for those final designs, drawings and costings to come back. And again, you have to remember, I don't think it matters who will be in administration in this issue, is that costs are going up, and you'll see that in you just see it every day on the TV with the construction industry, etc. We've reinvigorated and reunited and made a priority based upon further work being undertaken to assess the options regarding the Bottisford car park. And I've engaged with both ward members, Councillor Mason and Councillor Pritchett, and officers are taking that forward. And then we're working with both the rugby club in Melton Town to support longer term leases to facilitate improved provision. And that is nearly completed. The first part of that with the Melton Town Football Club has been completed and will be signed and sealed soon. And the rugby club hopefully will follow very, very shortly. And that's really important for two clubs that provide an offer of sport to a large number of people in the town and also spectators, etc. and will allow them to access significant amounts of grant money as well, which is really positive. Right, this is an area that we've decided that we always wanted to strengthen. It's been in our manifesto when on the 2023 elections, and what we want to do is we want to ensure that we have a robust economic and growth strategy that links in to our local plan, and that they go hand in hand, and we have clear direction for both businesses and developers to have confidence to go forward and release the land that's already been identified for employment and business use across the borough, not just Melton Mowbray, but across the borough. And we've been engaging with a number of businesses, new businesses, to talk about where they could maybe locate within the borough, within the town, etc. Ensuring that Melton's assets and opportunities or levers are maximised through the formation of the new unitary council. Because bear in mind, we're going to be setting this is a stepping stone. This is the front print, the blueprint for the new local authority. And hopefully, if we set that in tone, in trait, basically, what will happen is that a new authority will come up and hopefully pick up the baton, continue it, and then Melton isn't losing out. And this is what our other colleagues are doing across the other districts as well, the city and in Rutland. And it has been noted that the Scrutiny Committee will review and help shape the development of the growth strategy, and we would welcome your involvement in that. And then any new strategy would need to feed in and inform the growth strategy being considered and due to be developed across Leicester and Rutland over the next 12 to 18 months. So it's not just about Melton Mowbray, it's about a connectivity to Leicester City, to Loughborough, to Colville, also Nottingham, Grantham, etc. as well, because we bother all of those areas. Strategic partnerships, what we have been doing over the last 6-7 weeks, we've met with all the key bodies, reset some of the relationships, agreed some ways forward, been very, very positive. For me, partnerships are key and effective service delivery and outcomes to the borough. Without working with our partners, especially the county council and the city council, we're not going to get anywhere. We can't be coming up against each other. We need to try and work together. And there's been some quick wins, hopefully, and that which will come on to in a little bit. And it's one of the key drivers around local government reorganisation. But the list there is the Melton bid, been really proactive. Melton Town Estate, we've managed to sort out a number of issues that were sticking, and we've found a way forward with those. That's been a positive conversation. And Lydia's director and the team have been quite robust in those conversations. Loughborough College, we've had conversations with them about I'll come on to that in a little bit, about the theatre and about the work they're doing down at Brooksby as well, which also links into the economic development and regeneration. Had a really proactive reset and meeting with the Integrated Care Board, which I'll talk about a little bit on the health side. And obviously met with the Mayor of Leicester, the County Council, Rutland County Council, and the other 6 district borough councils. And we've found a way to go forward, work together, and be really pragmatic about how we run through the next 12 months. And we want to continue to support officers' strategic business and stakeholder engagement. And there's been some really good examples of that. We look at the work up at the stockyard, where the work of our officers with the consultants we brought in has actually managed to see that some businesses have actually, through that support, have actually, rather than go in a negative direction, have actually gone in a positive direction through the support, increasing their income, their output, contracts, and are going to expand. And not just there, that I'm just using that as an example. There's been many other areas that's happened, and credit where credit's due to that there. And then business engagement. Melton's Place promotion continues to strengthen, and the visitor and town centre economy and Discover Melton achieving about 152,000 website views, promoting about 210 attractions, 350 events in 25-26. We've had some really positive business engagement. I know that's happened in the past, but over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of activity with the businesses and organisations that we've been talking to, with 100 business supported through workshops, training and advice, alongside strong sector reach through the food and drink network and regular communications to over 500 subscribers. And the major inward investment, some of which was happening before, but it's going to continue, and we're going to follow that, and there's going to be additional business hopefully coming into the area. So it's 100 million in St. Gobain, 30 million through Toyota up at Old Dalby, and we're going to support the skilled jobs business growth. And again, one of the reasons for linking in with the college, this college, Melton Brooksby College, which is now Loughborough, and De Montfort University, etc., is we need to upskill the workforce in the borough. We have a low-skilled economy here. A lot of our well-educated young people tend to go out of the area and stay out of the area, and I'm an example of that in Ireland, in a rural community, leaving that rural community and not going back and not benefiting, and that doesn't benefit the area, because what you're doing is all that money's been spent in education, and they want to go out. So we need to make it a bit more attractive, and hopefully we can all work together on that as well. Okay, so maintaining progress. So this is getting things moving quickly. And that's all it's about, and getting things done properly so that we can hand things over. So our priorities are, we're going to replace the car park machines, and we're going to give all 3 options of payment. And in the future, a new authority could maybe come in and say, actually, but at the moment, everything's a third on what people want to use, etc. And we've liaised with some other local authorities on that there as well, what they're doing. And we can reduce that there, but it'll be at the same cost thereabouts that it is now, etc. Country Park Bridge, we put the order through on the 8th of May, and that got ordered. So we're just going to get that in, get it installed, and hopefully that will benefit the users of the country park. The mobilisation of the plan and preventive maintenance programme, again, we just asked officers to get on with it, get things moving, and you will have seen that there's been already some maintenance and improvements that's been made to the car parks, etc. There's been positive mobilisation of the housing repairs voids and planned maintenance contracts. And new arrangements for repairs plan maintenance are in place with voids contracts and arrangements nearing mobilisation. That's been quite positive and been proactive. The one caveat we'll put there is we have significant financial pressures on the housing revenue account. There is another significant overspend this year that we need to manage, which is going to affect. So I've asked for a review this week, haven't been presented with that information as to what maybe we can stop, because I don't want tenants not to be having repairs done. So we're talking about approximately 1.2 million of overspends over the last 2 years that we need to get a control of. And I've come in and asked for that to be looked at and scrutinised in a lot more detail, because the one thing we need is we need to make sure that if we've got repairs coming in the winter, etc., that we have enough revenue money to pay for that there. There has been capital underspends, but it's the revenue budget that's going to be under pressure once more. And if that continued year on year, being a housing professional, that is not sustainable with that there. And it's been some of the reasons for some unavoidable reasons around mould and damp and void costs, but there's been some avoidable reasons, such as invoices not being paid in the previous year, which we knew were an issue the prior year to that there as well. So again, that might be an area, Chair, that this committee wants to look at, because we do want to hand over the housing revenue account in a good position. It's not sustainable the way it's currently going. And policies and procedures scheduled for development and review include allotments, social value, domestic abuse, assets, community value, alignment of policies with neighbouring authorities also remains in scope. And the reason for that just makes sense with local government reorganisation. So one of the things, answering Councillor Twaite's question around older persons and supported living strategy, that's going to be being commissioned county-wide. That'll be developed, etc. And there'll be the key decisions made on Gretton Court and Granby House as well. And that may lead to different ways of how those schemes are being managed, etc. But also we will then, for the first time, probably next March, have an idea of what supported housing is needed in this borough. So that's everything from extra care to mental health, learning disabilities, care leavers, etc. Okay, and obviously, as requested by the committee, I'll update on some of the recent announcements that we've made. So in relation to the GP services update, this is not creating, I want to be absolutely clear, this is not about us creating a brand new GP surgery that's going to be run by a brand new GP organisation. We had discussions with developers. I'm not going to go into the whole detail of it, but I'm happy to do in a more confidential way, and with the County Council and with the ICB, that we may be able to, quite likely, be able to provide a satellite surgery in the southern side of the town under the southern urban extension. and there is upcoming negotiations that's going to happen with the developers, with the county council and our planning officers, etc., which will happen within the next 4 weeks. Those initial talks have already taken place with the said developer and with the ICB and with the county council, and there's a further meeting in the middle of July with the county council, who are going to put resources in to help us with that, plus the possibility of getting the southern section of the road. But we haven't gone that far with the road side of things, because I'm quite pragmatic. You need to take things a step at a time and be realistic of what can be achieved. But it's looking optimistic. Flooding again, on the portfolio that Councillor Joe Ocean holds, we've put that in there as a priority. Again, we've linked in with the county council. We're going to work jointly with them, with the LLFA and with Severn Trent, about looking at key areas within this borough where works need to be undertaken, where we have concerns, etc. And we have an understanding between the county council and ourselves that needs to be done. And most likely, most of the resources, ours will be officer led. The financial input will come from the county and Severn Trent as need be, etc. And that'll be work in progress as well. And happy to have any ward members who are affected as we go through that process to be involved or feed into it, and this committee as well, Chair. Melton Theatre update. Again, we've had discussions with the county council, with Loughborough College, etc. It's key asset to this town. It's a gateway into the town, etc. And we've made it very clear that we want to keep the theatre if we can. The way it'll work most likely will be through a commercial involvement and a commercial company or individual coming in and using part of the site for another use, and hopefully keeping the theatre. But those conversations are going on. I can't talk about them in much detail, other than the fact that, again, they're commercially sensitive, and at the right time, more than happy to, again, in camera, have those sorts of discussions, or certainly at group leaders meetings. Councillor Glancy and Councillor Brown, happy to have those conversations. I think it'd be important, because I think it's something that the whole town really wants, etc. But again, positive, but probably the one that's sort of on the cusp really of whether we can deal with not. And I've talked about the economic growth, what we're going to do there with the announcements there on the land that's already been allocated and the additional needs. So we're having meetings even with businesses out in Bottisford, which Lydia has coordinated, etc. So again, looking quite positive in regards to that. So in summary, we all know there's significant changes ahead for local government, and we'll all need to review and refocus from the 13th of July when we know what that's going to look like. Scrutiny Committee and wider members are involved, as I've already said. And just to remind you of the overall arch and principles of the Cabinet is to try and manage our finances well, look after the most vulnerable, ensure the Council is in a good position to go through local government reorganisation and be focused on key priorities, and would welcome any ideas of things that you think maybe we could just stop doing or redivert resources, both in staffing resources. The monetary stuff I appreciate will be much harder to do, but we will need all the staffing resources that we can have to get us through the next 12. It'll actually be 24, well, less than 24, about 18 months. So March 2028 when we vesting day. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. Can I just say to the committee, what I've tended to do when we've got this sort of session, I'm not going to restrict people unless you step over the lines that are in my head. And if you do, you'll find out. But just to involve the whole committee, what I tend to do is go round. So if you have 17 questions, I might let you do 2 of them first off, and I'll come back to people, if that makes sense. Otherwise, we can end up with having half an hour on one focus, and other people are sitting there, wanting to actually have their say. So on that basis, now start writing people's names down. That's it. I've seen Councillor Gordon's hand first, followed by Councillor Cox, Atherton, Glancy, and then Allnut. And I've got to just quickly write those down. So I'll take Councillor Gordon first.
Right, this is to do with the increased costs to the construction sector. And this is something that's in the minutes. So I'm just going to read it through. And I thought this would be interesting. Right, following a concern raised by a member regarding how the council will manage any increased costs to the works in the current economic climate and what contingencies are in place, members were advised that the project team remains aware of significant price increases across the construction sector. To mitigate this risk, elements of the programme have been secured through fixed priced arrangements where possible. This approach provides greater cost certainty and ensures that the development will meet the required quality standards and specification without compromising design intent. So fixed price arrangement is, if possible, is the way to go. So I just thought I'd just bring that up. This was in the minutes tonight. Thank you.
Yep, we had that discussion today at the programme board. At the moment, the costs haven't increased at this moment. There is a risk of costs going up if they can't be mitigated. We have about a £500,000 contingency sum. It is most likely there will be some increase in costs. We have to be realistic about that there. So I'm working on a project at the moment elsewhere, and on a £5 million project, the costs are going up 10%. Just on the materials, etc. So we just have to be conscious of that. It is the top priority for the officers on the rest. These guys are looking at it every week, updating every week on a Friday, and we discussed it in a lot of detail today about Councillor Brown and Councillor Butcher were inputted into that, and they both raised and made some very valid points about basically keeping an eye on that and making sure we have the controls in place. But the fixed price contract has been set. It's there. It's in stone, and we're checking through all the details of everything to make sure what happens in this scenario. If it was such volatility in the market, let's say we went to war with Iran, and then the price of everything's going to go up if oil goes up, basically. Materials and equipment and stuff come through that straight, etc. It's going to affect everything. So we're looking at all those contingencies, but so far it's okay. But it's a really valid point, and it's something that's very much it's basically a weekly discussion that we're having.
Okay, Councillor Glancy, just a quick one.
Thank you very much, Chair. You mentioned about the fixed sort of contracts. Surely it depends on the terms of those contracts as to whether we've got them really fixed and tied down, or is there some sort of leniency within the cost of sort of goods, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, they're tied down as much, but what we're just doing is we're getting a double check on just making sure everything's robust. Because if you heard what I said earlier, if it's so volatile, what does that mean? But at the moment, there'll be no effect at the moment unless we broke out into war and costs went absolutely through the roof. But then again, I think that's why I asked Councillor Clancy that we have an all-member briefing and we go into it in much more detail, because it's all commercially sensitive, as you'll appreciate.
Thank you. I can't, because I was at the project board today, and I actually raised some concerns around that, and we're going to get some further information on exactly how that is going to be set out in the contract. So, but I think it's an important point. You're quite right. Right, Councillor Cox. Sorry.
Thank you. As you'd expect, some of my questions will be finance-based, so I'll start off with the finance ones, if that's okay. So within your presentation, you made commitments to a number of additional areas of spend. I mean, cabinets increase, that's an additional spend. The money spent on the town that wasn't budgeted for, that's come out of reserves. The establishment of a town council you referred to a few times. Now, we knew that potentially would cost around 120,000 to establish a town council. And then obviously the town council would potentially relate to special expenses. Special expenses reserves are exceptionally low. You then spoke about allotments where we'd already allocated 15,000 from the budget last year. But the reason we hadn't allocated more is special expenses were exceptionally low. So where's the money coming from?
Okay, so on the town centre, the town council, sorry, Councillor Cox. That'll be a decision for full council. So prior to us coming in, there was a cross-party consensus that we wish to explore and look at setting up a town council. After the 13th of July, we'll have more of an idea of what things look like. If that goes ahead, that'll be a decision. If we go down that road, the council would, if we wanted to proceed, the council would have to make that decision to use reserves, basically. Okay, that's what other local authorities are doing. Now, we could turn around and say we're not doing that, and then leave it to the new authority to make that decision. So that's in all of our gifts. I'm not saying we're definitely going to do it, but you're absolutely right. In relation to the allotments, we're going to use the social value and return with our contractors, etc., to help us with that, plus a little bit of money to do things like a little bit of fence repair and trimming, cutting, getting things going. And we're also looking at the probation services as well to come in and help. So there'll be very little cost in that. In relation to the town centre improvements, we're in administration, it's a priority, and we've made that conscious decision to improve it. We believe that's the right decision, and we believe that having this town look the best it can only helps our businesses, helps people come into it, and that's a political decision that we've made. I understand where you're coming from, but that's my straight and honest answer back to you.
Okay, obviously I have to point out that there's quite a few commitments there from the reserves, which, you know, is highlighted as a risk. It's been highlighted as a risk for years by the auditors of this council. We, as a previous administration, raised the reserves quite significantly to the level they are at the minute. But even at the additional level they are at the minute of 3.2 million by the April just gone, it was highlighted that we would have a risk going into LGR, and yet the first thing that's been done is we're dipping into reserves all over the shop. So I do have concerns about that, Chair. So my next question is in relation to inward investment. It was a priority for us as well, and that's why, obviously, as you highlighted, 130 million pounds worth of extra investment. And I wouldn't say that was down to us as administration. That's down to the director and her team in terms of going out there to business events and encouraging business into the town. And in addition to the ones mentioned, we know of deals that have already been done before we left the administration. So my question is, what extra has been committed? Because if we're looking at resources, are we bringing in more consultants to that team, or are we looking at additional finance? And if so, where's that coming from? Or is that coming from reserves as well?
So there's going to be some staff. So at the moment, there's some staffing changes and restructuring using additional resources. But I'll just bring the director in here at this stage just to go into a little bit more detail, because it's sort of fresh off the page, really.
So as you said, there was already a commitment to inward investment. There was a strategy that was created and launched last year, and we're already committed. I think we discussed that at the last scrutiny on inward investment regarding the relationship that we have with the place marketing organisation. That is continuing, and we are strengthening that relationship with the place marketing organisation going forward. That's a commitment that we've agreed and secured going forward, and also linking that into the work that we're doing around the stockyard. So, for example, hosting an inward investment event at the stockyard. In addition to that, through the new administration's focus on the economic growth plan, that will be one of the components that is picked up through the development of the growth plan, is how do we continue to keep that commitment to inward investment and strengthen it going forward. And as Councillor Brown mentioned, through that partnership activity, and particularly looking at how we can work collaboratively with our colleagues at Leicestershire County Council as well.
Sorry, so just to confirm, what additional funds or resources gone into this?
So there'll be realignment of the staffing resources, and the county council are going to put their planning and economic team working alongside our team to look at our strategic economic priorities. So that has just been worked through. There's a meeting in the middle of July with the cabinet, etc., and we'll be looking at businesses to bring that in. So there's a lot of discussions going behind the scenes that are commercially sensitive, and there's discussions politically happening between ourselves and the county council.
come back later with further questions, Councillor Cox, but I'll move to Councillor Atherton now.
Thank you, Chair. You said you will develop economic growth strategy and would link it to the local plan. Could you explain why you want to do that, please?
So basically, this Councillor Pritchard will lead on this area, but it's basically we have allocated land, as we all know, for business development. We want to try and move that forward as quickly as possible and get the interest get the business already interested moving more quickly, and also getting other businesses that we could maybe attract into the area through working with our own teams and with the county council and with the region, etc. And it just makes sense, because if we're going to build housing, which we have to do in the local plan, we need to make sure that the commercial activity comes at the same rate, etc. And it just makes absolute common sense. It's something that we've seen happen in Cornwall, we've seen happen in Dorset, etc. And it's taking that approach over North West Leicestershire. They're doing it, and basically, I think it's an achievement to actually build those relationships with the county and have them involved. And it's a different political setup, but we want what's best for Melton.
Thank you. Could I ask a second question, please? You said LGR, you will want to work cross parties. How do you see that working in practice, though?
I've asked the officers to come up with a politically balanced terms of reference, etc., so that everybody's involved, and then there'll be regular meetings with the whole council, all 28 councillors, etc., to update them. And then basically representing this council will be the leader himself, and I'm supported by Councillor Ian Atherton as well, as the support role on local government reorganisation. And I've reached out to both the leaders of the groups to ask them how they want to be involved, and we'll have that conversation hopefully further at the next group leaders meeting. So I want to be as inclusive as possible, because to make it clear, there's many of us, won't be continuing probably as councillors, but there'll be many people who do, and I think it's important that we have that political representation, and who knows who'll be running any new authority. So hopefully that gives that commitment to everyone that we want to be as open as possible.
Next, Councillor Glancy.
Thank you. Just like to make one comment first before I ask you some in-depth questions. It's the fact that I'm really glad that you're sort of continuing the avenue of growth and the direction that we'd already commenced from May 2023 until April, whatever date it was. So I think that's absolutely good. So I'm really pleased about that. But you mentioned about the local plan and what Councillor Pritchard's going to do. Well, that local plan, the review of the local plan is already in, so you can't do much with it. Also, we've already got a lot of memorandum, some changes that we're going to recommend, which have already been submitted to the planning inspectorate or the local plan people. So there's not a great deal you can do apart from when you come to the hearing to actually say other things that you can do at that time. But there was already a sort of involvement of the inward investment and the growth with that local plan. So I'm really glad that he's continuing in my good sort of path that I'd already started. So thank you very much. It's absolutely brilliant. Also, the Country Park Bridge. Now, this is a bit of a bone of contention here. Pat, to be honest with you, I've seen various things on Facebook, posts from yourself, commenting, etc., and I believe it's slightly misleading residents and the people, generally the borough residents, which I think is really quite not in keeping of how we should be acting as a council. But bearing that aside, we're obviously aware of the way decisions are made and progress in the council, decisions that can be delegated and those that go to cabinet or council. So I presume you're aware of the decision-making journey of the replacement of Melton Country Park Bridge. Right, okay. So one of your comment was previous administration sat on it for 12 months. Well, that's a bit distasteful, to be honest. And I think that needs to be explaining now, and perhaps you can explain why you said we sat on it for 12 months. But let me just continue before you interrupt me. Officer. Oh, okay, sorry. Well, I'll shout, shall I? I don't really want to shout. It sounds like I'm getting angry, but I'm not. Cabinet approved the bridge on the 16th of July 2025. The full council budget was approved in 24th of July 2025. Now, I can't remember whether the opposition at that particular time voted for the budget or not. I know the budget went through. And the decision to award the contract was taken by Michelle Howard, Deputy Chief Executive, in August 2025. Now, you mentioned you've signed an order. Well, that's a delegated decision to sign an order. So I'm really pleased that we're actually getting this bridge done. But in between the July 2025 and where we are today, there's been an awful lot of work done. So no, we haven't sat on it for 12 months. Following award of the contract last year, contractors have been on and testing the foundations. Also in August last year, there was some considerable amount of preparatory work undertaken to move it forward, including ongoing coordination with insurers, contractors, designers, and the Environment Agency to ensure everything is in place to proceed safely and compliantly. Once the EA permit was issued, which I believe is now in place, we were good to go. This could not have been completed in the short space of time that you've been leader on the council, and I'm really, really glad that we're continuing with this. So just want to give you that background information, which I presumably you weren't aware of, because your statement saying we sat on it for 12 months, that is not sitting on it for 12 months. But that's more of a statement, it's not really a question. So I do think that that needs to be sort of clarified, which is why I've spoken about it this evening. Yes, yeah, I can do.
Yeah, when we came in, I was made aware that the order hadn't been placed. So if the language is not the way it should be, I apologise for that. But the point I was trying to make was that the order to construct the bridge and build it off-site hadn't been made. It was, and on the 24th I asked about it, sorry, the 25th I asked about it of April, and we asked for the order to be made straight away. So what I'm talking about is it's the construction that I believed hadn't been, and I'd been informed that it hadn't been ordered, and that order went in to build and construct on the 8th of May.
Thank you for that. Yes, that's probably part of the missing thing, but everything had been done up to that point. So when it goes out to the general public, they think, oh, good, you've sat on it for 12 months and now we've got someone coming in who's going to do a wonderful job. Well, that's political spin, which, perfectly honest, I don't agree with that at all. I prefer to have honesty, which I think is really good. I think that's my two questions, wasn't it? Local plan.
Yeah, by all means, I'll allow to come back. I said earlier in the meeting that I tend to allow a lot of latitude, but if we can get to a question a bit quicker, I'm saying this to everybody, you know, with the statements. I understand, you know, I understood why you needed context to the question, but it would be helpful if we can be a bit more succinct. It's possible. Councillor Allnut is next. Is anybody else's hand?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brown, first of all, welcome to your seat. Secondly, regarding the theatre, now, following the meeting on the 21st of April, I submitted a question to the monitoring officer for full council relating to this topic, which was a very lengthy one. I won't go into that now, but there's a crucial point here that I'd like you to answer, and that is it still true that the college are determined to sell the site at a commercial rate? That's as simple as that. There's no change from that. Do you want to answer that straight away?
Yeah, I'm going to probably be a little bit careful not to breach confidences of the conversations I've had with the college. They are still looking at a number of options, of which one is commercial, making the most advantage commercially, but they are speaking to a number of people, they inform us, and they've yet to conclude on that at this stage. I can't go into the detail of it because you would appreciate that, Councillor Allnut. But again, at the right time, I think, there'd be nothing wrong with confidential briefings, etc. With regards to that there. But it is open. There's still a chance of us saving the theatre with some of the people, that's organisations involved that may want to acquire that site, Councillor Allnut.
Well, thank you for that. That's essentially no change from before. In confidential briefings and in public discussions, the college authorities had said they must realise the asset at the commercial rate. But that did not preclude any bidder or any consortium of bidders getting involved. And you'll recall that at full council early on this year, I did say that I'd been in touch with 2 commercial providers who were in discussions with them. So that's still and this feeds into a wider point about the site, because of course, however the site is developed, it's an economic and planning issue. So I shall follow this, and as a local ward member for that area, I'd like to be briefed on it. So thank you for that. That's very interesting. Yeah, please.
So thank you. I think you make a really good point, is that we're also speaking with the county council because they've got an interest in that site with the library. Yep. And what's very clear is that anything that is put forward will have to meet the criteria of acceptable planning, and that's where both yourself and Councillor Brown are being involved in that there as well. So what I'm saying is that nobody's come forward with any ideas of any change of use, etc. with that there. Probably this isn't the forum to talk about it, but what I can reassure you is that we are trying to put as much pressure on as possible that whoever does take it on, or whoever they sell it to, that we retain that asset. Because let's be honest about it, if we lose a theatre, we'll never get another one back. That's basically where we are, and that's what all this is about. Is just trying to and we all probably go to it, love it, use it, etc. It's a great facility. Our kids have probably all our grandkids have, probably used it, etc. And that's what this is all about. And it's a gateway into the town. And you could put something else onto the side of it, etc. So yeah.
Just say, to reassure you, it is a matter of public record that the county council lease the public library from the college at a favourable rate, and therefore the purchaser of the whole site has to factor that in. So, but that is a matter of public record, so there's no disclosing anything. Now, just moving on, town council. Now, you mentioned it apropos allotments, and that you wanted to fettle up the allotments for transfer to the town council. Now, of course, you've got to have a town council to offer it to, and the town council have to accept it. Now, you mentioned also parishes, which I fully support, but of course, half of this borough is unparished, and that is the town. So we are where we are, but the LGR does not affect parishes per se. It may affect services to people who live in the parishes, but there is no institutional change to the status of parishes. And I'm sure if you talk to the monitoring officer, he will confirm what he said to all of us many times, is that the creation of a town council is independent of LGR. So my question to you is, I know you said it's a decision for council, but will you promote that idea to council with a specific proposition so that the process can be initiated? Because the longer we delay this, the worse it will get. I just want it to get the ball rolling.
I think, Councillor Allnut, you appreciate when you were a leader and we were all in together. I think we collectively agreed that we would work for the proposal. Absolutely committed to that. I think that the deadline that we set is October to bring that forward. Still stick with that. If in the instance, it's not just about whether we have a town council at that stage, even if we're handing assets over to a new unitary and they have to manage it for a while, we all want to do it from a reputational point of view, make sure our assets and our facilities are in decent shape, and people aren't going, well, what did they do? Why didn't they do this, etc. And also our residents as well. So that's the comment I made. So it should have been a little bit more clear to begin with. It doesn't matter who we're handing the assets over to, who we're transferring to. we need to make sure everything's working as best we can within reason.
Question about will you actually promote to full council?
Absolutely.
Opposition.
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
When will that happen?
The deadline we're working to, I think that we all agreed collectively, was October of this year.
Well, I didn't agree to that. No decision to be made.
No, sorry. Informally, we discussed at a group leaders meetings that we were likely, I think Councillor Clancy's nodding with me, that we would put the proposal forward for consideration at council, and certainly from the Conservatives' perspective, we will, in line with the other districts across the county, would want to promote a town council for Melton Mowbray to ensure that the whole borough is parished.
Chair, with respect, with whatever we informally discussed, I think there is merit in bringing it forward before October, because the process is a long process. But I'll leave that on the table. Other question was this: will you please publish the results of the survey that was carried out with respect to car parking methodology of paying? I'm not particularly for or against any particular methodology, and I'm pleased that we're proceeding with our plans to replace all the meters. But the question was, when we posed it, was what type of payments do you prefer? And we put forward different ideas. Now, I think, with respect, it would be very good if we published the results of that survey that was carried out, so we can see what people, because you made a point about asking what people's priorities are, and I agree with that totally. We should always ask people what they think before we implement a policy. That's a good idea. So will you please publish those?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I think it's something that we're about to do. So I'll speak to the office and see how quickly we can do that. We'll do it as quickly as possible.
Said to others, you can come back once they've been round the table. Councillor Olsen, I think.
One area that my residents are always complaining about is the planning department. So I welcome the investment. Will there be investment into enforcement as well?
Yes, the whole review looks at everything, including enforcement. Enforcement is under-resourced. They're not able to deal with the throughput that they need to. So in the next couple of weeks, there will be a proposal that will be presented to us at Cabinet in draft format to consider in relation to the enforcement service, but also the whole planning service, and then we'll take an informed decision then as how we move forward or not.
Thank you.
I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Thwaites. Just on that, I mean, I would tend to agree, but you've not given an indication where the resources are coming from. I mean, is this going to be an additional call on reserves, or are you looking to make reductions in other areas to cover this?
We're looking at the whole overall. As you appreciate, there's vacancies, etc. There's we may need a little bit more investment, as you say, but we're looking at the existing staffing structure, the vacancies, other areas in the council that have vacancies that we don't want to use, and we're looking at the overall pot to see what we can do within existing resources. And if we can't do it within that, we think we can. If we can't, we will be transparent in what we're doing, but we will want to invest in that. And we've taken the advice from the Section 151 officer, and we've had an LGA review as well, and we're confident we can do what we need to do within the restrictions that are set out for us. So
I'm going to just press you a bit further on that one. When you talk about vacancies around the council, that implies letting some jobs that are currently vacant fall off the establishment to help fund this. Is that going to have an impact on other services?
With any negative impact in any of our priority services, etc. And what we do see is we see this as having the right resources in the right places, doing the right things. And a good example of that is what we're doing in the property team, is ensuring as we bring the stockyard in-house, as we talked about earlier in those discussions, is some staff have left, as you're informed today. We'll be using that pot of money to create those new roles, etc. And that's what we're doing overall. And if there isn't an investment needed, we will take an informed decision as to whether we use that or not. But at this stage, we're looking at existing resources and the existing monies that are available to us at this moment in time. Okay. Now, Councillor Cox made a very good point about LGR and about the fact that, you know, it's not that attractive to come and work for a local authority at the moment, and there will be challenges to us. But we will have to deal with that. We'll have to take those informed decisions. You can come and scrutinise this, etc. But that's the plan at the moment. It was a priority of the planning service previously. It's an even a more important one. And most of the complaints we have coming into this authority at the moment is around both from developers, members of the public and parishes, is about the planning service not being fit for purpose. And we need to do that, because if that doesn't improve, that's going to drain so much time that then we'll need even more resources for local government reorganisation, because we can't not do things, because we'll end up with ombudsman's complaints, and we'll end up with reputational risk.
Thank you for that. This isn't a further question, it's just a suggestion that would help people understand these additional resources. So in due course, and I'm not putting you on the spot to come up with numbers here tonight, you know, it'd be helpful to know, well, additional planning officers, how many, additional enforcement officers, how many, additional support staff, how many, so we can actually quantify it with an explanation as to what it's expected that will achieve. So I don't think you're going to give that off the top of your head tonight, but I think that would help us understand.
It's been worked up, and in the next 14 days we'll have something to say. So it's just, there's had to be a lot of background work to understand where the gaps were, understand the workload, understand where people had left, where the vacancies are. There's been two. The first priority was to, as we discussed today, was the stockyard and the resources in the property team, which wasn't adequate, which you've seen the improvements, and this is just following on. So that's the intent. Yeah, that's the intent, and that's what we want to achieve.
I'll bring Councillor Cox in a moment. I'm not arguing against the need for additional resources, as you might understand from my my take on the world, but I think it's important we understand exactly what additional resources and how they're going to be deployed. Councillor, did you want to raise something about this point as a follow-on? Yeah, if Councillor Thwaites will wait one moment. Yeah.
I'd just like to know, I think, for scrutiny going forward, where the compromise comes, because if we're cashing in other roles, you say that won't impact on service, but we don't know that. So I would highlight that one of the biggest departments that we've got at the minute with a shortage of resources is finance. And if we're cashing in finance roles to assist with planning, that's going to have a major impact on LGR when money's becoming very tight, especially if you're dipping into reserves as much as you are, because they've got to try and make this money last. So I think just what is the trade-off? And where's that going to be? Because we don't want to see areas of good performance suddenly drop because we're cashing in roles from one area that's been renowned as good, because all those complaints will just switch.
You're absolutely right. We're not reducing. We're trying to find staffing to fill in the finance roles. I've just talked about we've uncovered another £600,000 overspend on the housing revenue account. Again, this is what we've inherited, which we have to deal with as well. So you've had up there looking after the finances first. That's not sustainable. So I think we've got 5 vacancies. You'll probably be well aware of this. We've got 5 vacancies in there in the finance sector. We have the housing revenue account lead manager leaving as well, retiring. I'm very conscious of that. We had a meeting yesterday at Shadow Cabinet. We've asked the office to go away and see if we can get resources in. We may have to share resources with other local authorities because they are having the same problems across Leicestershire, etc. Because you well know from a finance background, you do need to know the organisation you work in. You do need to know the intricacies. The accountancy practices is not the same in every organisation, how it works, etc. So really, really conscious of that there. And we're giving the Section 151 officer all the support that she needs to bring that. So that will not be compromised. If that comes back and we have to do that, that'll be the first and foremost thing that we do. So it's there. But it is, I'll be honest with you, it is difficult to recruit at the moment into the finance posts, and not just this organisation or my current employed organisation. It's difficult. So we're looking at all options, and there may have to be some temporary resources brought in to cover things while we're trying to find permanent staff.
And that's my exact concern with planning, sorry, is that you know, for a number of years now, we've heard planning is exactly the same. So the idea of using underspend on posts that are currently vacant or cashing in resources or posts to then fund planning, we're going to come up against exactly the same issue for planning. So I think it's about looking more creatively about how you get resources into planning, because it isn't going to be that simple fix.
That's exactly what we're doing. What I'm saying is we're working up that plan, and that'll be, we've had 6 weeks to come in and look at it, and it is a high risk area. As you've said, the finance area is high risk. If we start losing income because we're not doing planning that well, we've seen an increase in complaints from developers who are saying they're not going to bring forward developments because of the poor service that they're going to Charnwood and other places to do it. So we have to look at that as well. So there's 2 risks, isn't there? The one risk is if we don't do something, there's a risk of losing income. So we can't have that there as well. So we're bringing forward a robust plan. It is a priority, and we'll be absolutely open and transparent, as I've said along in my later speech, what we're going to do and how we're going to deliver it at this moment in time. But I am very aware of the financial challenges of the council and of the risks that you've set out. Yeah, and I welcome your input.
Going to move us on to Councillor Thwaites, who's been waiting. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'll try and put a question together, but between Councillor Orson, yourself, and Councillor Cox, you pretty decimated what I was actually going to ask. But as you know, I'm passionate about pushing planning forward and improving it, and been struggling over the last 3 years to achieve that. And was pleased with what you put on the presentation this evening about, because after 18 months of hard work, we did start to reduce the work in progress over the last 3 to 4 months, 4 to 5 months. I can't remember, before we changed administration. We did identify the IT systems that we needed to move towards, and the improvements that needed to go through that. And the things like the councillor contact process was put in place before the administration changes. So all of that is fantastic. And again, I understand the challenges of planning, especially planning generally without LGR, in actually staffing that, and the contract cost of actually trying to replace those places, because again, we are no longer an attractive proposition going forward, and so maybe we need to even look at even more radical ideas around that. But I mean, I suppose my original question was going to be, so what is different from what we were doing before? I mean, what are the things that we can actually look at to sort of say that's a different direction that we can actually look at and put some hope in?
Yeah, two things is, the first one is, I'll start with enforcement. Yeah, right. We know there's a massive backlog, and we know that there's a lot of frustration there. We need to there has to be some sort of extra additional resource going there to clear that backlog and deal with the cases that where people are purposely breaching planning regulations and legislation, and give the public confidence that we will deal with that. And there's too many of those cases that are sitting around. So that's the first. That's going to be the difference. So they're going to prioritize the cases and then we're going to go and say, there's the 40 cases we're going to look at. You'll be consulted, all of you, as ward councillors, if that affects you in your area. If something's going to fall away and we're not going to do it, etc. And that's been listening to the staff, and that's been listening to the complainants. We're looking to bring in some expertise in relation to the support that officers are getting about writing reports. That's something that I've heard continually from members of the planning committee and from developers, so that things are coming to us much better, clearer, well written, and are actually coming quicker, because the amount, even though you've cleared a backlog, there's a large amount of applications that we're having to go back out and reconsult. Right, so we don't want that, because again, that's wasting resources, wasting money, etc. Like that there. So it's sort of invest to save, in a sense, if what we're doing there, and then to bring in that support for the team in relation to being able to confidently deal with those developers, with those parish councils, etc., and give them the confidence. And we're having discussions about that tomorrow, about moving that forward. So that will be different, very different. And I'd expect when you as a councillor go to your briefing about whatever issue you've got, that you're speaking to somebody who's got the confidence and they've got somebody back behind them, and people with a bit of gravitas that can actually challenge the likes of us and say, actually this is the law. If you do this, this is the consequences, etc., and be more clear. And at the moment, we don't always have that expertise within the team. I think that without going into too much details, I think it's appropriate to talk about that. But I think we'll appreciate that. So that's what's going to be different. And the other thing that's going to be different is we're going to have quite more robust relationships with parish councils, because we get a lot of them coming in and getting mixed messages, etc. And we want that relationship going back and saying, be firm when we need to be firm, but actually be clear or listen to them, etc. And that's what's going to be different as well. So they're the three things that are going to be different. And as you rightly said, it's taken 18 months, and it's been hard work, Councillor Thwaites. And I thank you for all the work that you've done. But we want to ramp it up and give it another go, because absolutely we've been listening to everybody. And it's important because that's going to be one of the biggest services that goes across the whole of Leicestershire when it transfers.
And it was just one then, which was again one that's been a bit of a painful process, but about assets. And the one you haven't mentioned actually is garages. It's been a passion of mine, especially as several councillors will know, that we have hundreds of assets which we should be getting rid of, and they're actually costing us money rather than gaining money. And I believe before the change of administration, we were desperately close to doing that, but it's not been mentioned anywhere. So I just wanted to get an update on that.
Yeah, sorry, it's been a little bit remiss of me. Yeah, that will continue. Just so I'm absolutely clear, I've asked for a full review of the housing revenue account situation. I was made aware last week of this further deficit, and we have to understand what that means. And there's capital commitments that have been made, because some of those garage sites, it's not just disposing of, it could be redeveloping, etc. And there's capital money needed there. I think if we just went and spent the capital budget and the housing revenue account as it is now, it's going to cause further risk to the housing revenue account, because we've started off the year already with a £600,000 deficit, which wasn't budgeted for, etc. And that's, I'm not going, it's not all blame. It's some of it's that extra damping more works, it's void works. There is still been an issue with invoices not having been picked up from the year before. That shouldn't have happened with regards to that there. So we need to look at what we can do capital wise and what needs to be done. So for example, just to give you an example, you made a decision to dispose of the Fairmead Centre, right? If we need some of that capital money to invest to help the housing revenue account, get us way over, an idea of mine would be, could we lease that on a short-term lease at a peppercorn rent and get rid of the overheads and use that additional money in the priority areas that we're going to need? Because if we're going to have more, large volume voids, significant capital works, if we have a storm over winter and a few roofs blow off, etc. At the moment, there isn't the headroom in it. And if we go another year with another £600,000 deficit, the housing revenue account becomes unaffordable. That's my bread and butter. Where I've looked at it, and I've given direction to the officers to just do a full review of the capital programme, and that is in my thinking. And if we can dispose of an asset that we're not going to develop or do anything with, we will do, and that will be done in the next 2 weeks as well. I know I've put a lot of pressure on the officers, but it is concerning me that we've gone that far. To be remiss just to continue and go, yeah, let's just keep going, etc., and keep spending when it may be that we don't have enough revenue within the existing budget to carry out all the repairs to our tenants this year.
Yeah, thanks for that. It was my understanding that where we got to with the disposal and development of the garage sites, that we'd got close to the knowledge around those areas. So hopefully that's still there. But it's also put in the other things around it, which is nearly all of the garages have antisocial behaviour problems with them, not just the extra cost that it's costing us to keep them in a state that isn't dangerous to our residents, as well as the pests and all the rest of it. So it can't just be a financial, but I believe the financial decision was almost there as well. So hopefully that can continue pretty quickly.
Yeah, so It is continuing. Just let me rest assured. It's just a review of everything to see what we can spend capital-wise on things. I have also instructed the officers to initiate interaction with a number of key housing associations that could possibly come in and take those off our hands, pay us a capital sum and move them forward as well. That's something that hadn't happened, etc. Also as well, for any sites that aren't tenanted, we need to work a plan of getting those out of serving notice and get the tenants out, etc. So it's not just as straightforward. So it's not that we're not doing what's been set out before. We are going to do it. We just need to be absolutely conscious of, we make that financial decision to do that, because there'll have to be some money spent up front to do it on fees, etc., clearance, maybe stuff like that there. Planning, everything's subject to planning as well. So the sites would all be, I imagine we would dispose of them subject to planning. We'd want to put overages, all those sorts of things on the sites as well. But it is working forward. But I just want to give you a clearer explanation that we were continuing at pace, and then this sort of news was given to us a couple of weeks ago.
Going to go to Councillor Holmes.
Yeah. How many garages? I mean, this is probably a bit facetious. How many garage sites have we got? Because I don't know how many years we've been going to sell them off, and we haven't sold them off, and although they're in the, anyway. When we're talking, this is really more just on a question, but as what we're talking about planning, are we not right in saying that the most money comes in for planning? People pay for plans. I know somebody in the Scorford area who's actually paid £10,000 already for a bat survey. They have had their plans in, and they paid for the plans over 18 months. And we're still no further. So I do think we need a shake-up and help with planning, because that is where the money comes in, I think. People pay for it. The theatre, my daughter was there the other day. It was so packed out. Now, I might be going off piste a bit here, but when they were not going to keep the cattle market, well, I fought and I got other people to fight. And it is the best cattle market, certainly in the country, in England. I'm not saying in Scotland. And we kept it. Where and why, can I ask, why we haven't been working harder to keep the theatre? I'm amazed. And I just feel that we are missing something here. Anyway, I've finished now.
Okay, yeah. I'll go through them in all that you raised. I think that we've got about between 400 and 500 garages from memory at the moment. I don't know how many sites we have. I could probably take you around them all, because and we have developed some of them. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. I know I was involved in developing 4 of them for our own housing and some with housing associations in the past, etc. Yeah, we've went over the planning stuff. The theatre, I think it probably has been a priority for others as well. It's just it's how much you can do, etc. And in relation to the cattle market, it is very much a priority, and we talked about it today. And the cattle market, I have to say, is doing very well, and livestock sales are up, and let's hope to continue as fellow farmers. That would be in all of our interest, etc. That would be positive. Yeah. Okay.
There's 400 garages over 30 sites. I've just been reliably briefed. And 390 of them have ASB issues, I think, picking up Councillor Thwaite's point. We've been round the... I'm going to ask a couple of questions now, if I may, and then I'll do the rounds again. But actually just thinking, I think it's the first time on 3 years on this committee that every member of the committee has actually had something to say. So that bodes well. Just a couple of questions from me. And one is, I hear the words, but I don't know what it means either in time or resources to give more support to parish councils. Can you just flesh out what you actually mean? I mean, other than saying to parish councils, we love you, what specifically is going to change in terms of support to those bits of the
Yeah, so
local
the first thing
government
is around the planning offer that we're going to give, which will be the same offer for them. Probably going to come in on Teams call for specific issues they may have to speak to a planning officer, etc., or an enforcement officer to see where the cases are, the program, but to get a better understanding. Because I think for those of us who are rural councils or those who are on the cabinet leading and planning, often there's a misunderstanding sometimes of what the real issue is or what we can and can't do, etc. And that will probably help in relation to all of that there. And then after the 13th of July, which we'll do in consultation with everyone, we have to come up with an offer of local government reorganisation and what that looks like across the county. And we envisage that we're going to put in physical office support that will engage and liaise with the parishes around that as well. Because it's not just about the district council going, it's also about parish councils across the county and the town council, and that'll be done collectively. So there've been some discussions around probably additional officer resources going in around the whole of the county to work with the parishes to ensure that they're engaged. And I think Councillor Cox is going to say, where's that money going to come from? Well, it's going to have to be reserves because we don't have the money to do it any other way, because that's what every other council across Leicestershire is going to have to do. And or we don't do it and we do it badly. But we could make that decision as well. But we'll see it's going to look like. We'll see what the geography looks like after the 13th of July, and then we'll start forming decisions, proposals, etc., and look at costings in relation to all of that there. So that's just an honest, open answer. So we have a choice. We either do something or we just do something and we trundle along into 2028.
The officer time is the specific I hear there, which would have resource implications. My second question, and it's really about timing. So in your presentation, you talked about there's going to be a cabinet away day, and then there's going to be an all-member presentation about, refocusing, the corporate plan and LGR in September, and then asking scrutiny to be looking at that before cabinet making the decision around December. That's most of this municipal year gone. Which I find a bit concerning. I know we're constrained to some extent with LGR by the timetable, and we know until we actually know specifically what the new structure is going to be. But we know in broad terms that whatever the new structure is, we aren't going to exist. And I'm just a bit concerned that we're going to have everything crushed into quite a short time frame because we won't actually have reached decisions about where our priorities are. And the discussion has always been about, you've got to be realistic with LGR. There are things we do now that we won't be able to do. And the sooner we actually start being honest about that and refocusing, the better. So I just wonder, you've got any views about whether that timescale needs to be reviewed and whether it needs to be concertinaed a little bit, because it doesn't leave much time between making a decision and the shadow elections for the new authority.
Yeah, so they're indicative times at the moment. So yeah, cabinet meet, I think it's the week after the 13th to look at the priorities. If you're minded to, and there's officer resources, we can look at doing something sooner than September with the wider body. I think the officers were just concerned that people will be away in August on annual leave, etc., just because it's local government reorganisation. But if there's enough people there and I can have a conversation with the leadership, I'm sure we can do that there, and that pulls that forward by about a month, doesn't it, etc. But again, happy to have a conversation, Chair, at group leaders, our next group leaders meeting. I think by the sounds of things, we're going to have a lot to talk about to work through. But if we want to do that, make that agreement now that and if Councillor Glancy's okay with that, we could talk about how can that work in dates. Sorry, at the next group leaders meeting, Councillor Glancy, maybe we could talk about how those members outside cabinet want to fit into sooner briefings on LGR, if you're okay with that.
I'll start doing the rounds again, and I saw Councillor Cox's hand first, then Councillor Allnutt's, then Councillor Glancy's, then Councillor Thwaites. Hang on, let me write some names down. I'm going to forget. So Councillor Cox first.
Sorry, so this one's going back a bit because I had to wait my turn again. Parkside and the development of Parkside, that is subject of a time limited grant. It is a capital grant and not a revenue grant. A proportion of that had already been spent in relation to design, Martin's Law compliance, staff consultation, potential for moving staff from Phoenix into Parkside. Are we now not pushing all those things, or are we revisiting all of that? Because if we go back to redesigning things or compromising things, we are going to be at real risk with auditors on that grant.
We're on track. There's just a slight change to design due to costings. Yeah, we talked about costs going up, etc. Anybody would have been faced with that. We're not going to lose the grant, etc. I'm just going to bring Lydia in because I haven't spoke to Lydia in the last week, because last week I instructed for things to get moved forward as quickly as possible. So if you don't mind, I just bring Lydia in to bring the technicals. That's the one thing we haven't discussed this week.
So I've had a meeting with the organisation that's supporting us with the design and development of that, and there is still a commitment to relocate, as per the original decision, the community support hub from Phoenix House into Parkside. We are adjusting the design in terms of to ensure it comes within the capital envelope that is required, and we've been very mindful of ensuring that whatever changes are still in line with the funding outputs that are required from that capital perspective. I will be bringing forward to Cabinet any revision to any decision that's required for that, and we have a revised programme that still allows us to expend the external funding within the timeframe of the funding allowance.
Sorry, can I just ask, because there was significant consultation in relation to the original designs, and that was taken through the Martin's Law group and the wider staff group. I'm just concerned if we're compromising on design, which I understand because of the financial pressure. I'm satisfied you're meeting the grant requirements, which has put my mind at ease a bit. If we're then changing staff's working spaces, will the staff be made aware of that? Because that consultation had been, I thought, really robust and good.
So two elements to that is that we are very mindful of the regulatory requirements through Martin's Law. We're continuing to include the health and safety officer and the health and safety working group as part of the design revisions, to be mindful of that going forward. There no compromises to that would be made. And then the second area is absolutely, we remain fully committed and are continuing with regular staff briefings. And as part of any design revision, we have invited the relevant officer who's going to be leading on that internal comms to ensure that officers are up to date with any of those changes. The meeting that took place with the design consultant this week, we're taking that forward in terms of that consultation, and that will be scheduled in within the next 2 weeks, because it is a tight time frame. We recognise that. We don't want to lose the money, but we want to ensure that, as you said, those health and safety requirements and the staff consultation is kept up to date. And we have continued to keep staff up to date while we've been reviewing the options for the costs in terms of that.
Before I bring in Councillor Allnutt, I mean, just on the issue of Parkside, and I'll come in on the back of those comments. We're going to ask a question later. I mean, one of the dilemmas, and I think it's a rock and a hard place situation, is that not just until we know the decision on LGR, but until we've had some fairly robust, and I think what could be some quite challenging discussions with whoever our partners are going to be, we're not going to really know what our requirements for accommodation, space, etc. in Melton will be. But I would throw down the mark, and I invite the leader to agree with this, that it isn't just about shuffling bodies around in a new structure. The existence of Parkside or Phoenix House in the past, where there is about employment opportunities for local people in this town. It's about businesses in this town that actually get trade through the existence of these offices and the fact it's the largest employer in the town. And therefore, whatever's being decided on Parkside now, there's going to be something further down the road that we're going to have to be actually looking at. And I'm not sure whether that's all been thought through. I know it's difficult because we're trying to anticipate something we don't know the shape of. But I've had a concern for some time that we're not seeing it in if you like, in a local economy context, and what we should be fighting for as officers for the new unitary authority in this town.
So yeah, absolutely. I did the staff briefing and I said, looking at my experience elsewhere in the country, I said to everybody, take this as an opportunity to develop your own careers, take it as an opportunity to do different things in a new authority, etc. We will probably see more staff working in and around Melton in a new authority. That's what you see in the other unitaries that have been created, because there'll be most likely there's going to have to be some sort of hubs, etc. that's created. I see it as a positive thing that would probably generate more bodies who come in and have the sandwiches and do things in town or go for a drink with their colleagues after work, etc. Completely agree with you. We had a discussion at the lesser group leaders meeting. Again, we're all on the same hymn sheet on that. Everybody else sees the exact same opportunity, no matter what the structures are. And I see it as an opportunity to bring people like our social workers or public health into hubs, etc. I know I've harped on about it, but one of the things I'm impressed about is down in Cornwall, where you've got a hub in Truro, you've got a hub in Bodmin, etc. And it's actually generated a lot more people coming in, i.e. fire service, all that co-located, etc. And I would hope maybe in 10 years' time that it's not just council officers and public health, that actually it's you got to have the police, the whole lot together, like they do down in those areas, which then, as you say, just generates more people to go and buy things and socialise in the town. So fully agree with you. And let's have that conversation, Chair, when we get together in late July, early August.
Good. Well, I would point out we used to have those hubs in this town. It's the county council who pulled them out. But, we won't go down that road. No more comment. Yeah. Councillor Ornat, I think, was next.
Very quickly, I noticed on the portfolio holdings, the portfolio holder for landlord services, that's Councillor Lumley, has got private sector housing licensing for HMOs. Now, obviously, licensing per se is not an executive function because we have a licensing committee, but we don't license HMOs, do we? So can you just explain what this particular role is to do?
Yeah, we do license HMOs. We have a small number of licensed HMOs which we look at, and under the new Tenants' Rights Act on HMOs, etc., there's been some new burdens money where we'll be expected to go in and inspect those houses of multiple occupation, whatever they may be. So it could be an exempt housing association, could be a private landlord, etc. With regards all of that. So we do have that. Also, as well as we're looking at HMOs, and we're seeing an increase in applications for houses multiple occupation and what they've been used for, etc. Which also there's going to be a piece of work also done which complements into children's homes, etc. As well as how we manage, look at them, etc. Which Councillor Pritchard's leading on. So it is an important piece of work, and we need to make sure that if you have HMOs, they're in the right places. And they're complying with the regulations around health and safety, fire regs, etc., etc. So those new burdens are coming on.
Sorry, you've missed me a bit here. At the moment, we don't license HMOs, do we?
Yeah.
No. What licenses do we grant?
We inspect anything that's over 3 units. Yeah, we do.
No. What I'm saying is this. When it comes to a planning application, that's separate, isn't it? That's a planning issue. But if a private company buys a house and converts it and converts it through the planning process, that the license that's granted is granted by who is granting the license within this council?
Environmental Services.
So right, but does it go to a committee?
No.
Not at all.
No. No,
Right.
so it does, but it doesn't necessarily, does it, Director?
It's delegated decision. I can share with you the information that we have on our website regarding houses in multiple occupation, if that would be helpful.
In this context, is it a cabinet portfolio holder's decision or not?
We're not making the decision on who gets a HMO. What we're looking at is the condition and standard of the houses of multiple occupation. Okay.
My point
on the Renters' Rights Act.
That it's as with a shop that's got to have certain standards. That's a sort of routine administrative task. But we mustn't give the impression that this council can say yes or no in principle to an HMO, because we can't.
We're not saying that. It's more about the standard of accommodation, and some of the standards of accommodation, councillor, are poor, and I welcome what the Labour government has done around the Renters' Rights Act, which the previous government had done, because we need to make sure people are living in decent conditions, that they're not damp, they're not mouldy, they've got the adequate heating, etc. That's all this is about. And the rest of the private rented sector is now under more stringent inspection regimes, which so it's making sure we're not missing any private rented accommodation.
Right. Well, the reason why I'm asking the question is because obviously Councillor Lumley made it a big piece of his statement at the annual meeting and at the special meeting about the influx of HMOs, and that was related not to the sort of thing that you've mentioned, but obviously to immigration and illegal immigration at that. Now, the impression is being given that somehow the council can prevent that, but we can't. What we're talking about is the standard of housing in the private sector, which has been rotten for years. You know, from Rachmanism onwards, long before you were born, if I may say so. So we must make certain that Councillor Lumley does not think that he's going to prevent HMOs for migrants. Because I have an application in my ward for an HMO, which we're resisting for different reasons. But the point is this we mustn't run away, because there are people out there, the public, who think that this council can prevent HMOs. And I want you to be very clear in saying publicly that we can't do that.
I've not said that we can prevent it. Nobody has said that. We have a regulatory obligation to make sure people are living in decent accommodation. It'd be completely remiss of us to just leave out one group of private housing and then hammer all the other landlords if that's the case. And we had a confidential briefing this week to which I can't go into, which we can share with you, just around the very small number of HMOs that this borough actually has, right? And I did that for a particular reason, to make sure that that's, and if we need be, we can put that into the public domain under the right circumstances. I'm more than happy to do that to show the public. I work
was
in the house.
Councillor Lumley privy to that?
He was privy to that.
Well, I'm very pleased, because the statements he's made in this council chamber contradict what you just said.
But Councillor Lumley, like anybody in this room, can make their own political statements and judgments. I'm not there to dictate to people, as long as to do within the rules, etc. But what I'm concerned about, and also as a housing professional, is to make sure that we have the best standard of housing in the borough. And that's what this is all about. And I agree with you, private sector housing of all sorts has been one area that's why we have homelessness lists, because people are having to move out of accommodation because it's not adequate, it's damp, it hasn't got the right heating, the electrics aren't right, etc. This is just one small part of a bigger picture of looking at the private rented sector. And it needs to be looked at, because I work for an organisation that has HMOs. I work with other housing associations, and they don't always comply with it. and they have to be registered. And I'm just dealing with a property I have in Scotland where I've had to go through a complete regime of where I've got 7 tenants in the property, and the council quite rightly pointed out that certain things like insulation and stuff like that aren't adequate, and we have to do it, and that is completely responsible of our authority to do it. So we should be doing the same, and that's what it's about. So if you've got a personal issue with Councillor Lumley, that's between yourselves, but it won't be on my watch that people are doing anything untoward other than whatever their political beliefs are. That's entirely up to them.
Sorry, Councillor Glancy.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like to come back to planning. Sorry, just to recap. We'd already embarked, I say, over the past 18 months on a plan to improve planning by involving an outside agency. I shan't say the name. Are we continuing to work with them? That's one part of the question. We also made investments in iDocs because we realised that was a huge problem. So there was over £100,000 had gone into iDocs investment from our capital programme, wasn't it? So that's already in place. So I dare. My assumption is, from what you've been saying, that you're continuing with that sort of avenue of that project, which is really good, with a few tweaks, as you mentioned. And you probably remember my passion for involving the parishes when I had all the various working groups with parishes when we're looking at planning applications. You may remember that because I think you commented once about how well that was going. That was back in 2021. And I think that those sort of things are really, really important. So I'm really pleased to see that. But I just wanted to know whether you're going to continue working with the outside agency, who actually had already had enforcement on their radar as well. So it was part of that general work that we were embarking on.
Yeah, I'll bring Lydia in a second. Yeah, we are continuing to work with that there. What we're doing is enhancing that and making it happen quicker because it needs the additional resources, etc. So it'd be complete madness, Councillor Clancy, to undo that because we supported that. You know, that's not disagreeing with any of that there. But Lydia, do you want to come in with the detail about the particular company and what we've agreed?
Yeah, so we're still under contract with that company, and that is continuing for the time being. It was a fixed term contract, and it will run to its conclusion, but that has formed the basis for the enhanced provision that Councillor Brown has referenced. And if I can reference an expression that he used earlier in the meeting, you know, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, there's been a huge amount of work done by that company to support us understanding the issues within planning and then looking at how we can address it. That has incorporated several different work streams, including enforcement too.
Can I have one more question? Thank you. Well, it's a question with lots of different bits in it, so I apologise in advance. I'll warn you now. This is mainly about the town improvements, and I know it was always on our radar as well. You mentioned about the bridge entrance into the town. I understood that was Melton Borough Council's sort of property basically, and you mentioned it was going to be Leicestershire County Council and Network Rail. I know there's various bits underneath that would be Network Rail, and the lamps were, I think the lamps were ours, but the new ones in. But the bridge itself is ours, so I don't know how we're going to pay for repainting that. I mean, that's going to be extremely expensive, which would be a huge drain on the reserves, as I just heard in my right ear across the table. But to be honest with you, I'll have to be honest with you, it was on our radar, and I know Councillor Butcher had already mentioned that it needs to be done. It needs to be done because if we want to encourage people to come into our town, the entrances into the town have to be improved. And this was one of our main things that we actually wanted to do. So I'll say thanks, you know, for putting it on the radar, and I just hope it gets done. But the various things around the town, the King Street building, is there progress on that? The wall at St Mary's car park, that was due to be repaired last month. Has that been done? And I haven't seen whether it's been done yet or not. And also, one of the most important things, you mentioned Martin's Law earlier. have we negotiated with somebody or whoever to open and close those gates into the town? This is a huge thing. If we're dedicated to protecting people and pedestrians in the market square during very busy times, we need to have those gates closed and open and closed, and we need to commit that money to make sure it's done. Otherwise, there's no point in having the gates. So I'll leave that one with you.
Yeah, in short, they're all on a priority list being worked through, etc. And there was a meeting last week with the town estate in relation to the gates, etc. And that's an ongoing discussion that's happening. As you well know, that's not. It's probably one of it's. I've been here since 2002, and it's been an issue since then. If that makes sense. So we'll see if we can progress that. And on the other points, yes, we are progressing things in priority. And just to be absolutely clear, Councillor Clancy, the point is making about the bridge, etc. We can't just go and do things there. It has to be negotiated with the authorities, with Network Rail, and then there's other bits with the county council have got authority over, and they need to get on and spruce up their areas as well. I've got a meeting in the middle of July to hopefully sign that all off with the leader over there.
You mentioned Leicestershire County Council, but from what I've been reading today, they're in dire straits with their funding, so I don't know how that's going to work. You mentioned also about flooding, improve flooding, and for them to help with that. I think their funding is probably even more dire than ours, because it's obviously on a much bigger scale, and that's one thing I'm a bit concerned about.
Yeah, like any authority, they're a massive authority. Where the funding pressures are on things like SEND, adult social care, children's social care, so it's in different pots, etc. All I can say is the conversation's been positive. They want to do certain things. They've already allocated money, as you're well aware, to flooding, etc. What we're doing is we're just encouraging and working in those relationships to get our fair share over here in Melton. And that's the same with Severn Trent. So, for example, in my village in Frisbee, I know it's that we've had a few £100,000 worth of upgrade works done to the drains and sewers, which has sorted out the flooding issues we've had, and that's just been direct negotiation between myself, the parish council, and some local residents, and that's what we're doing as well. So that hasn't cost this council a penny.
Okay, I'm about to say I've read two versions of the County Council's financial situation today, and how interesting that two people could look at the same thing and come up with completely different conclusions. And Councillor Thwaites.
Thanks. I'll try and make it brief. As Councillor Holnett will attest, I'm not just interested in the ageing population of Melton. I'm also interested in the younger population, and I'm interested in the comment you made about upskilling. And how we're going to do that, especially given the time frame that we're on, because things like the college and all the rest of it has been I think a poor situation in this town for the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years, that we're not bringing the younger people into skilled jobs, as you said earlier. So what are the actions you're looking at with that? Because you talked about upskilling specifically.
Yeah, we are working with Loughborough College. You see a significant investment down at Brooksby that's going on down there for various things, agri-tech and other technologies, etc. Our team have linked in with the Montfort University as well. And then when we're talking to businesses, a lot of businesses now, as we well know, we've got relations, kids, etc., are basically taking young people in and putting them all through apprenticeship schemes, etc. I was just speaking to a young lad the other day who did his whole accountancy qualifications through an apprenticeship rather than going to university, which is probably a very smart way of doing things in relation to the savings he's probably made and not got himself into debt, etc. So it's that sort of strategy working through this. We've got a great facility in MV16, but not everybody wants to go down the academic route, and we'll encourage where we can. But the other thing is that's why the relationships with the county council are really important, because they are the education authority and they're the ones that have got the influence. So the conversation that we're having with them is that we want them to get more involved in Melton Borough as a whole, etc. And then up in the north, we're also linking in with the likes of Grantham College and over into Nottingham, etc. as well, because that's where the kids are going to naturally go to, and businesses, etc. So Lydia and the team have very much got on the radar, and it's a conversation that they have all the time with each of the business that they're talking about and each of the educational institute. But I think some of the good work that's been carried out there will start to continue and bust up. But the county really need to come to the table, as do the FE colleges.
Thanks. I do have a second question, but I'll just come back a bit on that a little bit, which is I'll refer to Councillor Brown's earlier comment about this organisation being a great employer of skills, young skills, and introducing them through and making them into senior officers in a couple of occasions, you know, and that's something that we should consider and make sure, especially as we go through LGR, to actually make that happen.
Yeah, that's something that we're doing. You just have to walk upstairs and you can see the amount of young people that are now in the organisation. It's very much changed from my day I was employed here. I came through from a junior officer all the way up into senior management. I think this council and most councils across the country, I have to say, are very good at bringing talent through who wants to go through. And I deal with a lot of local authorities, and I have to say, Melton's pretty good in it and continue to, and that's the way it should be, and that's the attitude that's there. So just to completely echo what you're saying, and it's for all of us to encourage when bringing young people through, and especially local young people if we can. And if they want to go on, I know there's, I was speaking to a couple of ex-employees here the other day that have gone on to Leicester City Council and are doing very, very well. But they wouldn't have done that if they didn't have the ground in here. So it's just a little example.
Comment?
Thank you. If I could just add to that, if possible, please. A couple of things. One is our commitment as officers doesn't drop off a cliff because of LGR. We are continue to commit our commitment to upskills, all the plans around economic development and growth and inward investment. And that's why it's so important that we work collaboratively with our place marketing organisation, our colleagues at Leicestershire County Council, as well as the districts and Rutland. And secondly, I suppose carrying on along that theme, as we're not dropping off a cliff. We've applied today for an opportunity which is funded for a graduate in our local plans department. So we're continuing to look at opportunities. I've got a very good apprentice in our property team at the moment, so that is continuing, and that's not stopping. That continuation and commitment to that upskilling internally, and also from an external perspective. You may recall that we've already worked alongside Saint-Gobain to put on workshops to support with their skills opportunities and job opportunities forthcoming, and we continue to offer that for any future inward investment inquiries and business support.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, part of my question was because I knew all that was happening and everything, and we've got a fantastic record in doing it, and especially with Saint-Gobain and that, etc. But it is what was new because it was mentioned as a specific area. But I'll move on to the second question that I had, which was you talked about the healthcare and the surgery. Having sat through most of the local area, the Integrated Care Board scrutiny meetings, where they categorically said at the end they did not see a need for more or a larger healthcare or a second surgery in the town because they did not see the need. I'm interested in how that has how we've changed that view, because I mean that was stated plainly in their own scrutiny meetings.
Yeah, conversations obviously moved on, because the conversation we've had is that the biggest barrier was they're not going to pay to build something. So that's not going to happen. That's not how this is going to work if it goes forward. It'll be a developer building it. I don't want to go into too much of the detail of it at this stage. It's early days. And then it will be most likely another practice that will come in and have a satellite of GPs, probably not the existing one in Melton, probably somewhere else. And that's been receptive, and they're looking at the numbers who've left Melton and gone outside of Melton, and they're looking to bring those numbers back in to actually have the health services in the town, etc. It's not going to happen in the lifetime of this council, to be absolutely honest, but what we can do is we can set the foundations, working with the planning team, with the county council, etc. And if we can leave that sort of a footprint or foundation of a legacy, it means it'll continue, and whoever takes over will ensure that that follows through. But the conversation has been positive. We've identified where it could go, etc. There's a few things around planning policy need to be sorted out, but it's optimistic. Let me say that.
So I've stated my views many times. Sorry,
Sorry,
on the political promises, but and my disbelief in any of them. But yeah, so the timeline is not within this council's lifetime.
Yeah, and I've never said that, and I haven't said that we'll definitely consider it. It's an opportunity that we should look at, and if somebody else is going to deliver it, that's great. But yeah, absolutely clear. It's not going to be a brand new source. It is commissioned. That's what it is, and there will be the need with the growing and older population. I'm dealing with somebody new in the ICB, so whether things have moved on or not, but I completely take on board, and I can see the difficulty that we had as administration and you guys, the previous administration, had as well. So completely on board. Yeah.
I'm bringing Councillor Elnott in a moment, but I'm going to step outside my impartiality as chair and say, well, the ICB have always been very good at saying, as long as we don't have to pay anything, you can have something, and they've never delivered. And that was true with the previous, not just the previous administration, the one before that, and it was true of the more recent administration. Who were going to fork out basically the money for the development of premises for a second surgery, and everything was going to be fine until it wasn't. So I'm just putting on record on behalf of the people of Melton, and this isn't a pop at you, Ronan, as leader of this council now. This is a pop at the ICB, that they've strung this out for years and years and years, and the people of this town are seeing their health service deteriorate commensurate with that. And frankly, someone here needs to say that the people of Melton don't think that's good enough. Councillor Ornat.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brown. On the 23rd of April, that was 2 days after the special meeting, I attended a meeting with the ICB, and Councillor Joe Orson said that he would report back to you because you couldn't attend, and that's not a criticism. It was only 2 days after you took over. Sorry, you were in hospital. Oh well, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. That's why I said it wasn't criticising you at all. Councillor Cliff was there, and Councillor Brian Lovegrove, and Brian actually made a brilliant statement. I was very pleased, and so was Andrew Innes, the Reform councillor, and we were all in agreement that we were critical of the ICB for all the reasons that we've shared. But you said a moment ago at the start at your presentation that there was agreement, I thought you said, to have a satellite surgery. It's just an idea at this moment. Right, okay. So to pick up Councillor Thwaites' point, as I understand it, the ICB have not moved from their position that statistically we don't need a second surgery, and that they also said, and they've said it in public, so I'm not revealing anything I shouldn't, that they don't think there is a shortage of sites or properties in this area for when the need does arrive. Now, you mentioned planning, so we come back to the old 106 malarkey and all this stuff. So obviously, with all the development going on with MMDR South, that creates an opportunity, perhaps. Now, I had discussions with other surgery practices, which I won't repeat because that is confidential, about setting up a satellite to get the thing going. And we said on the 23rd of April, we must just get it started. But there is a slight reluctance amongst some people to believe that Latham House should provide that satellite as they do at Asforby. There's a desire to have an injection of new blood with a degree of competition, and I can understand that. Latham House is struggling to cope with demand, but they are recruiting. Their recruitment pattern is improved, and I don't think we should shoot the messenger. They're doing what they can. So This was a public meeting and it's being aired publicly, so I think it's very important that you've qualified what we thought we heard you say earlier, that this was going to be a bit close. In fact, it's going to be some time. It could be it'll be another year before they even consider details, and then there'll be funding. There'll be all sorts of things to go on. So we mustn't give that impression to the public, as on many things. Don't overpromise and then underachieve. Rather underpromise and overachieve. That's the better.
Just to be realistic, I said it was a foundation, and I would see it as something that probably could be achieved in 5 to 10 years. Being realistic about that, but it would set the foundation and the principle of the planning if we can get there. And again, happy to work cross-party in this one. Is this about health, etc.? I left the said practice because I couldn't get my health services dealt with there. So I completely agree with the people of Melton, the frustration, etc. So it's just about if we can do that together, we might leave some sort of legacy that can be followed through in the future.
May I just add quickly, because it's in the news this week, we've had the tragic report about maternity care in Nottingham, and we know that our local maternity unit was closing because of the new facilities in Leicester, which are not guaranteed now, really. And the whole raft of maternity care is in a bit of a state. Now, we all agree that women should have choice, and where necessary, women and their families will need to go to a centre of medical excellence, in terms of surgery and so on. But for others, more local maternity provision is still an important feature. Now, I think really with all the news around what's happening in Nottingham and across the nation, because it's not just Nottingham, it's other places, I think it would be opportune for this council to restate that we are thoroughly disapproving of this idea that there should be no maternity provision for birthing in this area, particularly as we're a growing town. So I would like you to revisit that with the ICB and the others, please. And Councillor Cliff would not forgive me if I didn't mention it.
I did. We did bring that conversation up, as you can well expect.
Okay, no more hands were up before that introduction. I think I'm going to bring. I think we're at a conclusion, but I'm going to bring it to a close with a parting shot myself about the health issue. I mean, firstly, some of us are an age, Ronan, where 5 to 10 years is not very optimistic sort of timescale. But I think more pertinently, and it's right we continue our discussions with the ICB. It's right that all avenues are explored, and I'm not gainsaying that. But it does seem that in conversations with other areas, it isn't just about we need more doctors in Melton, but there's a distinct sense that the service being provided in Melton is not up to the standards that it is in some other places. And I think that needs to be that's perhaps been dodged as an issue in the discussions that have taken place with the ICB. And I think as a council, with some degree of public health responsibility, we have some leverage there to actually be more challenging over that, because it's not just about how many GPs or how many surgeries, it's about the nature of the service being delivered out of them.
Totally agree with you, and I used my own personal example recently of why I had to move surgery because I couldn't get the service there, and there was a bit of an issue that if it had went on, it would have been a lot worse. And you imagine how many people haven't had the ability to get themselves up and move somewhere else and get that service. And I completely agree with you. And I did bring up the ICB that they may on average Latham House hit the stats, but the overall poor service that you get, when you go to the, my experience was I went to the reception, I was told, well, you can get an appointment in July, it's March, and if you're not very well, just take yourself to A&E. Well, you imagine how many people have been told that, and that's where I did end up at that stage. But and how much is that costing, etc. So I completely agree with you, and we'll continue to do it. And I'm sure between us all, any opportunity we get, we will hammer that home.
Thank you for that. I can see Councillor Thwaites wanted to come out. As we're getting about personal examples, it's a bit dispiriting when you go through the proper process to contact our local service to get a text message back saying, we can't see you, we suggest you go to 111 and try and get to an urgent care centre, which I did. And it was very good, I have to say. But it's not satisfactory and it's not open to all people to exercise that option.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that, because one bit we haven't mentioned, which is the perceived lack of willingness to send people to the hospital in Melton, and the preferred route seems to be at every occasion to send people to Leicester. And a lot of people can't travel, or it's difficult to get to Leicester. And there's always, again, I don't know the facts, I don't know the figures, but there's always a perceived view in everybody you talk to that there's a reluctance to refer people to Melton Hospital for blood tests, whatever. And I think that should be added into that conversation as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. Funny enough, I had an appointment there this week, and I was absolutely shocked that the procedure they did was actually at Melton Hospital, and I went in and I was the only person that was there, which very underused and underutilized. And I think, if you could get, I'm sure there's reasons for it, etc., as you say, but I agree with you. And plus it must save the money if you can just go locally and get it done quicker. So yeah, I'll take that on board and follow that up.
Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I have to have blood tests every 3 months, and sometimes because I try to get in at Latham House, and sometimes because they say you have to wait because of the calendar and everything, they've not got onto that side. So, but when you forget and time goes on, I do go to the St Mary's Hospital in Melton and have that. So I just thought I'd just add that. It's very good for that, really is. And then obviously they send it off to Leicester. Just thought I'd just mention that. Thank you.
I am going to bring things to a close, but first I've got some very exciting any other business that I'm going to refer to Lydia Ruslin.
Thank you. So this evening there's been the regional RTPI awards for planning excellence, and as planning's been mentioned quite a few times this evening, I thought you'd be pleased to know that Melton Borough Council has won the award for best plan for the Melton Mowbray Town Centre Design Guidance supplementary planning document.
Okay, I think that's an excellent note on which to end tonight's meeting. I mean, thank you, everybody. It's been quite a long one, but I hope useful. And I hope it's been useful to you as leader. I'm officially closing the meeting now.